You're live.
We're live. Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Welcome to 96 Boards Open Hours. My name is Robert Wolf, and today is August 9th. We are broadcasting live on YouTube, Facebook, Blue Jeans. We are also recording, and this is episode 110. Winston, you get the nice round 110 episode of Open Hours. How does that sound?
That's an exciting little claim to fame.
Exciting. Today we're joined with Winston Moy. Winston is a maker extraordinaire. Honestly, I've been poking around his videos for the last week or so. A lot of very amazing stuff. He does YouTube. He likes posting all sorts of stuff when he goes adventuring around the world. Also, I want to say that, you know, when I watch your videos, I feel very educated. By the end of the episode, I feel like I've learned a lot. So, Winston, if you don't mind, though, we're going to give you an introduction segment in just a second. Before that, I just have to share a couple things. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, excellent. For some reason, I don't know why, but on my screen, I'm only seeing my picture. I can't see yours. I'm going to have to fix that in a second. But great. So real quick, some announcements, if I may. Last week's episode, we had a fun one. I would definitely suggest tuning in. It was with the folks from ShearTech. So we had two people visiting us from ShearTech, names Ramon and Guy. They shared a new mezzanine, which is based on an FPGA to bridge the gap between the 96 boards ecosystem and all of your Raspberry Pi and Arduino hats and shields. So that board should be available very soon. For anyone who's interested in checking that out, definitely go visit. That Sahaj can share it because I forgot to put it into my doc. Another thing I'm going to share is 3 different contests that are going on right now around 96 boards, sponsored by a variety of our partners, including ARM, Xilinx, Avnet, Qualcomm, Embarcados. Cool prizes. That does not include even a free board to work with for winning your prize. So you get a free board and you can go win a prize with that board that you're given. Now, I have a few other announcements. I'm going to save those for the end. So now we're just going to kind of dive right in, go right in with you, Winston. But also, just so everyone knows who's on the call, we are on Facebook, YouTube, and Blue Jeans. If you're on the Facebook or the YouTube channel, there should be a link in the description for you to kind of siphon on over to Blue Jeans. If you do want to kind of join here, please click that link. You can download the app or join right through the browser, cruise on over to Blue Jeans. So, Winston, what's up, man?
Not a whole lot. I kind of may have told my supervisor I have a doctor's appointment right now, but life's not bad. It's busy though.
Okay, so that was actually I was going to ask you for this is one of my questions, but I'll leave it for a second. Could you give us kind of a little 2-minute elevator pitch of yourself?
So there's kind of two sides of me. The day job, I am an engineer for the Navy. I work at NavAir Lakehurst, so it's a facility where we do support equipment for aircraft. So anything that keeps the plane flying that's not the plane itself. By night, I am a digital fabrication evangelist. I've got 4 CNCs. Started in my living room, and I finally decided that aluminum chips and sawdust in a carpeted environment just wasn't a good idea. So I eventually moved to my garage, and I spend most of my time just coming up with new creations, using traditional materials and non-traditional form factors. And I've got a YouTube channel where I document all my successes and failures. That's kind of it.
Awesome. Perfect. That's actually a really good elevator pitch. So now I want to break this interview up into several segments, and I want to remind everyone who's watching, if you have questions, please bring them up in the chat, or speak on up. We'll get them answered. But I have questions about being a maker. I want to talk to you a little bit about CNC because it seems that you've done some really cool videos on that. I want to break out a little bit and kind of, for anyone who's interested in becoming a YouTube star or wants to get into YouTube videos, I want to talk to you a little bit about that. And then we'll go on to a little bit more personal stuff with an adventurer and how this looks, the different things that you do, as well as your aerospace enthusiasm. Enthusiasm? And with you being in aerospace, with you being an aerospace enthusiast. So first off, I want to talk to you about And I've been to several, conferences where, makers flock to these conferences, and we're talking about lots of things that go on there. You have maker fairs, and then you have some other conferences which might be considered a little bit more technical, but comfortable, or are you okay with the title of maker? Is this something that you are?
I think so. I don't see any negative connotation to it. And what I'm doing,
Yeah,
I'm not
no.
really what are you gonna say?
Say I've heard people say that they don't want to be called makers, they want to be called professional makers, or I'm not a maker, I'm a developer, even though they are making things.
I mean, in the broadest sense, a maker is someone who creates something that wasn't there before. And even though right now, because of like the maker movement, you might have sort of a connotation of being a generalist. I mean, I really don't see anything bad about it unless you're trying to use the title or use your title and you don't want to be called a maker and you want to be known very specifically for something. Um, I'm fine with it. I relish the fact that I'm still learning because if I knew what I was doing, it wouldn't be nearly as fun. So by casting myself in the light of a generalist and someone who's learning as they go, I think that's an important part of the process to keep in the title of maker, right? It's an organic process of sort of self-discovery and creation, and I'm on board with all of that.
Awesome. Yeah, I would say the same thing. I mean, when it comes to, and I have some questions later about this, but when it comes to, like, say you're saying the general view of what a maker is there's something that doesn't exist and now it does. I made that. I'm a maker, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, now what brought you into this world? Because you're saying that you work in I would say a very closed source, closed environment, working with military. What kind of brought you into doing stuff like this? And have you been doing it? What made you one day just kind of stop and say, like, hey, I want to start doing this stuff that I'm doing right now, making things and tinkering? And I mean, was this like a something you've been doing from a little kid?
So it did kind of start from back there. I think I, like a lot of other kids, used to take things apart when we were young, right? So for me, it used to be telephones and like tape machines. Um, and like I enjoyed just understanding the intricacies of things and how they worked and like basic gear sets. But when I entered college, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I entered as an open options engineering student. Wasn't sure if I wanted to do like electrical engineering, computer engineering, mechanical, or if I even wanted to branch out into the sciences as a chemistry or physics major. But just over time, I realized that working with things tangibly, like working with your hands, having a physical product you can hold at the end of the day was the most satisfying for me. And so that's how I chose that career path. Now, what got me into the whole making side of it is sort of driven by my, I want to call it Michigan exile. I went to grad school at the University of Michigan. I hadn't visited the campus before I applied, and I got in, and I mean, the community was great, but it's also like Michigan, and like you stay in Michigan through the winter, and it can be pretty isolating. And so I was sitting in my living room, like watching YouTube videos from some other makers who I admire, and I was just wondering, like, what's stopping me from doing that? Because that looks like a lot of fun. And so I got to thinking, and it's, well, I don't have the space or the tools, nor do I have the skills. And the skills part is like something that takes a lot of time, and I don't think I'm going to acquire that anytime soon. I can get the tools. But then thinking back as a mechanical engineer, I was like, well, I know this technology. There's CNC milling machines. Why can't I just get a robot to do things for me? And all I need to do is come up with the idea and it'll execute it. And so at the end of my grad school, I some research online, found the Shapeoko 2 CNC that was, I think it was just entering basically Kickstarter. I don't know if it was Kickstarter or not, but one of those crowdfunding early pre-order type campaigns. And I ordered the machine. And in the winter of 2014, I got it. I started unboxing it, started sharing my journey, and everything sort of fell out from there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I mean, like, this is kind of a side project. It's like my next question was going to say, do you look at being a maker as more of a hobby, or is this kind of something that takes up equal time as your work? I've talked to other makers and they say that, you know, like even just editing a video can take you 40 hours a week.
Yeah, that's definitely a risk. I think like Evan and Caitlin threw out like a figure of like 20 hours a week. I think I average about 10, just because I don't do a lot of like post production. I don't do any color correction. I do all my dialogue at once, and I just pair the video to fit the audio. But for me, it's definitely more than a hobby, and I view it sort of as a lifestyle or a reflex. So for like, as an example, my former roommate, he was getting engaged with his then girlfriend, and he came to me and was like, "Yeah, I've been looking for a ring box so I can propose, but none of them like sort of like really fit what I want." And I was like, "Well, I could make something like this," and it's sort of just that I can do it instinct or feeling, and bringing that into your life and sharing it with the people around you, that sort of makes making special, right? Because you could just make things in your bedroom forever, not share anything. But when you sort of become the maker of your community, that sort of opens a lot of doors for yourself and for other people. And so that's why I see making right now for me as more than just a hobby, but more of a lifestyle. Um, and moving beyond that, like eventually I want to sort of make this almost more of a career. I want some of this to contribute to more than just a couple of dollars here and there from YouTube income. I want it to have a slightly bigger portion of my revenue to come from my creative endeavors.
Yeah, I saw that ring box video. It was pretty amazing. You know, in fact, I was watching some of your videos, and I'm in the process of shopping for an engagement ring. You know, I'll be looking for some cool ring boxes, and that was a great like it was very unique ring box. I really liked it. But so I want to address some questions because I don't want the people on YouTube to think we're we have questions that are popping up, and again, we will be addressing these as we go along. I have like a million questions, so you know we'll try to address all of them. From YouTube, this is from Dwipayan. I hope I'm pronouncing that. Dwipayan Sen Sharma, and he says, what should be the back end approach in setting up IoT solutions with regards to real-time problems as a budding engineer? So, I mean, we might get questions that things aren't particularly, you know, geared towards what our topic is, but, you know, please, you know, you're an engineer, you work a lot of really cool stuff. So, you know, please like help us answer this.
Yeah, that's definitely out of my wheelhouse though. I haven't done a whole lot of IoT stuff, so I
Okay.
leave that ball in
Okay.
your court.
All right. Let's what should be the back end approach in setting up IoT solutions with regards to real-time problems as a budding engineer? Well, I mean, I want to push this one off to Sahaj or John Mark, to be completely honest. But this is kind of a pretty vague. Maybe I would suggest, first of all, going and learning as much as possible. If you're a budding engineer and you're just getting started, there's so many things out there that you still need to learn. I mean, find your passion, find the things that you enjoy to do the most, and then go brush up and learn as much as possible about those things, and then start creating your solutions. Because if you're just going to jump into the deep end by starting to create something, you might find yourself all over the place. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe someone else wants to chime in that.
I'd probably say if you are just starting out, kind of start with concentrating on security, because a lot of IoT projects don't really do that, and that's a very big part of it. So if you learn how to create a secure IoT platform from the beginning, I think that would help you a lot.
Well, there you go. So security. We get it. We'll be around in the after hours to talk all sorts of more technical stuff, and we can have a heated debate on what people think IoT actually. Yeah, cool. So Winston, moving on here, I have more questions about your maker life, and I'd like to know, you know, what kind of advice would you give to any people who might want something like the things that you do? So, I mean, you're talking about people who are busy, right? Like there might be people who are very busy with their jobs, but they just want to, like, you know, get this experience. You're saying this is being a maker. It's like almost like a religion, you know, it's like, it's part of yourself. How can someone else kind of like, they have this little spark? How can you kind of stoke those flames and make them make them bigger?
So that's kind of a tough question, because unless you make the conscious decision to set aside the time in your busy life, it's very difficult to build any momentum, right? So this applies to not just how do you get started, but also like how do you learn like something like CNC, and it's to sort of scope or bound your problem so that you're not trying to bite off more than you can chew. So like if you want to get into making, pick a project, pick something small, pick something where you can sort of see the endpoints, the start to finish, and so you can work through the problems, and there's a finite amount of stuff you need to learn. So like if you wanted to get into CNC, start with a simple project, like how to make a sign. You can learn just the basics, like how do you design the text, how do you design the shape, how do you cut things out without getting overwhelmed by all the other stuff that might come with it. So normally there'd be like, you could do 3D carving and 3D CAD, but the learning curve for that is really steep. But if you sort of pick your battles, you get small victories. That's how you build the momentum and sort of the habit of, hey, let me just knock out this quick project. Let me go through the workflow, get familiar with it, get comfortable with it, so that you can then start branching out and trying different things, trying more complex projects. I wouldn't jump into this expecting to be able to do everything, but like start small and take those victories, build the confidence to do more and more as you go. So start simple.
No, yeah, great. And I wanna kind of like touch on this because you keep saying CNC, right? And people who are watching might not know what CNC is. But I did share the playlist that Winston made. I'll say it wasn't too long ago, was it? But on getting started with CNC. So it was like earlier this year. So like this is 5-episode series, getting started with CNC. Very cool series. In fact, I love how you start each one. You know, it's you have a very soothing voice. I'll tell you that. Like I feel like I want to learn from you every time I watch these videos. So let's see here. Yeah, so get familiar with CNC there if you want to do that. And I have some questions on that in a minute, but these videos, like, I mean, when I'm watching your stuff and you're saying CNC this, these are machines, all of the stuff in your videos looks like some expensive equipment. Now, I'm not familiar with this stuff, but, you know, back on the topic of like you're saying someone who wants to, now they have to decide consciously, I want to put this time in, I want to get familiar, I want to become a maker, I want to make stuff. But now financially, does this equipment cost a lot? Because I mean, it looks like your garage is pretty well equipped.
Over time, I've built up a somewhat sizable arsenal of machines, but for the most part, like a basic intro level CNC machine will start anywhere between $1,000 to $2,000, and all of that may seem like a lot. I'd also like to point out that people often have computers or cameras, and these cost hundreds of dollars. And the way you get to that is by sort of coming to terms with the fact that this is important for what you want to do, and you will save up the money to acquire these technologies, right? So if you determine that CNC is something you want to get into, then you should probably start budgeting for it. And it's not an insane amount of money. And with how prevalent it's becoming, just like 3D printers, although CNC is a little behind in terms of market penetration, you can very often find these in maker spaces or wood shops. And so, or you might even know someone locally who might have one. So there are ways you can sort of try it out, see if it's for you. But the financial outlay to get one of these machines isn't too ridiculous. Like it's within the realm of possibility. If you've got a significant other, you might have to run it past them first. But about $1,000 isn't too crazy, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I mean, it does make sense, right? Like if I want to become a photographer, I'm not going to go out and buy a $20,000 camera.
Anything else?
My Google just lit up. If I want to become a photographer, I'm not going to go out and buy a $20,000 camera, right? Like I'm going to go buy maybe a $200 camera, get familiar with it. And if I'm really into this or I want to continue going, then maybe later I end up, you know, putting out the bigger expenditure. Kind of same thing, I think, with 3D printing and all this other kind of stuff. There's all these different printers.
Like there's a problem.
My gosh, Google. Mute this. Yeah. So for anyone who's interested in in getting involved in this kind of stuff. You heard it from Winston. It's really not a huge investment, but again, you know, even down the street from my house, and I know that around the world there are lots of these maker spaces. You can go down there and you borrow a CNC and you can borrow 3D printers, and it's not that expensive to get, you know, your foot in the door on this technology. All right, so now I want to say you have a technical background, right? We're still on the maker, everyone. So like if you have maker questions, let's stay on this topic. You have a technical background. You're an engineer. You do some very interesting stuff with the military, but there are people out there that might not have such a big technical background. So can you give any advice who might still want to get stuff in the maker community, but don't have a technical background? What kind of routes would you kind of push them towards?
So it kind of depends on what kind of project you want to do. If you're into the like sign making or like making a lot of the stuff on Etsy, all that stuff can be classified as a 2D or a 2.5D machining operation. Basically, you draw contours or profiles and you either pocket them out or you cut layers down to a certain depth. And those you can design in something like Illustrator or Inkscape. So in terms of designing the project file, you can look at it sort of as an art problem or like a graphic design problem. If you want to model things like props or random things like SpaceX Dragon capsule bottle openers, then you got to start getting into the world of CAD. And so it's sort of picking and choosing what do you want to make and how do you approach the problem of creating the model. So for people who aren't familiar, the CNC workflow sort of encompasses three things. First, you need to have a 3D representation of what you're cutting, 3D or 2D. It has to be digital. And then you have to turn that representation into a program that can be run on your CNC. And then you have to actually execute that program on your CNC, make sure that you secure the material you're trying to cut so it doesn't fly off. And that's sort of how you go from idea to physical product. And there are different branches within that workflow. So you can sort of focus on approaching like 2D cutting or 3D cutting. And even within that, there's subsets, types of projects that you can do. So depending on how comfortable you are with the different softwares, like Fusion 360 has a very steep learning curve. SketchUp, not so much, but it doesn't have as many powerful tools behind it. So you should sort of scale your projects to your technical ambition and sort of start there. Like I said before, like you want to pick like sort of one project that you can bound your problem and you don't get overwhelmed with all these different technical things you can learn. Some of my first cuts, I just ran my machine right after I built it. I didn't bother with the calibration of anything. I sort of just threw it together. All right, the belts are tight, the spindle doesn't move around. All right, let me just start cutting. And I wasn't concerned with like the technical perfection of like this cut has to be exactly 1.00 inches wide. Like I just wanted to make stuff. And after I got a couple successes and I could sort of let myself relax, I could start to focus on like, all right, what about the precision, the accuracy? How do I get to there? Whereas before I was just sort of focused on like, all right, let me like machine like a clamp or like just a little coaster, things that don't require like super critical dimensions. But as you get comfortable with that, then you can start affording yourself the opportunity and the time and the mental capacity to start exploring other areas that might have scared you off before. So just don't let yourself get overwhelmed. Focus on one thing at a time. That's basically all I can say.
You're muted, Robert.
I like that. You kind of touched on it on the beginning, but yeah, I mean, you know, I guess there are so many things that you can do, right? I mean, from, you know, cutting wood to soldering to just to programming to all sorts of cool stuff you can do, right? Myself, like I literally have boxes, chests full of electrical components, from old school potentiometers to like all different types of IC chips. And so I went in there and I picked up a bunch of little gadgets, right? Looking at these little fidget devices online, you know, like the dice that you can like make little fidget
Yeah.
things for your hand. And I decided, I'm going to go grab all these electrical components. I'm going to solder them together, make some way, put them together so that it's comfortable in my hand. I can twist and pop and click and I guess that makes me a maker, right? I mean, to some extent. And then you
Definitely
can
think
go on
so.
to perfecting it later. Yeah. Cool. All right. Let's see, where am I over here? Okay, this gets in maybe a little bit more fun and towards the end of the maker segment, but what has been your favorite make so far? And maybe we can
So
share that video too if you
so I'm a little
find it
biased,
real
and the
quick.
video's not coming out till tomorrow. But my favorite thing has probably been the latest thing I made, and that is actually, I've got it nearby, so you can see it on the live stream. Anyone listening might have to take a look. So this is a wooden mallet made out of purple heart and laminated maple. And so what I like about this is that this is sort of my first foray into sort of quote unquote woodworking. Like I started worrying about like, all right, how do I sand this to like a really fine like mirror finish? You can almost see the sheen of it in the lighting. Like the wedges to hold the handle in, like the end grain. So I actually sort of like let my creativity loose and do something more for aesthetic reasons than for engineering design reasons. Um, just because I want to start making things that can be appreciated for the visual as much as the technical learning aspect that goes into it. A lot of my projects are like, let me make something because I know it's going to teach me a new technique, or let me try something new because I've never done this before and I'm curious. Here, I knew sort of the mechanical design, how it was going to go down, but I wanted to produce a finished piece that was polished, not just in the visual sense, but also like it's just a nice piece to look at. And for me, it's sort of opening a new chapter in the kinds of projects that I want to take on. So that right now is kind of my favorite. The video will hopefully be out tomorrow. But it's just me trying to move beyond the basic learning, like, all right, how do I conceptually like create this toolpath and cut this shape? Here is like, all right, how do I cut that shape, but then how do I finish it? How do I sand it? How do I integrate all the pieces together so it looks like really nice, like a really beautiful product rather than just a nice technical showpiece? So that right now, that's the exciting direction for me that I want to take some of these future projects in.
I saw that hammer for the first time on Instagram, and Winston's in on the chat. So I just shared his Instagram on the chat. So if you want to click that, but how did that video that you did you just grab like a phone and the hammer and flip it at the same time?
So the thing is, you've got to match the center of rotation. So if you just take a phone and you spin it, if you throw it up, it's just going to spin around this axis, like its center of mass. And the hammer is going to spin a little further out, like its axis will be out here, and so like this part's got a radius, this part's got a radius. So actually, I taped my phone to a ruler, so it was sticking out so it basically had its own handle, and so its rotation actually matched the head of the mallet a little better. So I went to my yard so these wouldn't land on hard asphalt or concrete, and I threw them a couple times until I finally got a matched rotation on both of these. The other hard part is if you stick a handle on this, if you just stick a ruler to a phone, the mass is offset a little bit. So when you twist, the mass of the phone is out to one side, and so you get a precession of the rotation. So if you twist this, it'll start to like roll instead of just pure rotate. And so that I taped on some more mass on the other side just to match the weight profile. But yeah, it was just a fun little thing I thought of just to do because I didn't have a lot of action shots of this thing, so I figured, oh, let me just throw it around a little and maybe it'll look cool on the camera. But I'm not sure if that footage is going to be usable.
It's a cool video. I was sitting there, I watched it probably, I don't know, 5 times or something, but I was like, I wonder how many times it took him to nail this because it doesn't look easy, you know?
Close to 20.
Yeah. Close to 20, okay. Yeah. I told myself one day, this was like a I don't know, maybe a year ago now. I said, I'm going to start building up my YouTube channel. And I never did, but I did start recording some things. And I was amazed at how many takes it took me just to do some of the simplest things, just to even do introduction sentence. I was doing like 5 takes. But
that's why I do a lot of my dialogue offline, like pre-recorded. I don't do it live just because I know I'll be stumbling over myself like 5 times in a row.
Yeah, these doing live stuff like this always gets scary. Sometimes I, dead air. But cool. This is the last question of the maker segment here, and then we're going to move on and have some stuff about CNC, YouTube, and so on. If you had if money was not an option, if I don't know if it is an option, but if money wasn't an option, what would be the one thing that you really want to make? Have you thought about this? Granted, like we could also say you're not working, right? Like you have all the time in the world and money's not an option.
I was going to say time is the other limiting factor oftentimes, and also space, right? And I'm in a 1-car garage, so I can't do a lot. But one project I really just like in the back of my head that I want to get to eventually is to do a camper van conversion. So I know you'll get into this later, but I enjoy adventuring and road tripping across the country. And with my roommates and some of my friends, like we sort of had like an annual pilgrimage out west, and we'd rent a camper van, go around Utah or California. And I really like that lifestyle. And I've seen a bunch of people do conversions or build their own camper vans. And I kind of want to approach it from the side of like, all right, how do I do it with a CNC? A lot of people, they're retrofitting in like lighting and counters and like plumbing and electrical. And I was thinking like, well, I've got a machine. I can cut like the perfect recess for like a sink or some like shelves to hold things or like some sort of like intricate brackets that I could have a folding bed. And I want to use CNC as a way to attack the problem of how do I make my own camper van. And so if I had the time to put into this, if I had the space to keep a camper van in my garage or in my driveway, and if I had the money to just go and buy a van without fear of like spreading myself too thin, that's something I totally want to take on. And I've seen like Laura Kemp has a video where she sort of did her own little conversion, and based on her experience and some other makers I've seen, like I know it's possible. I know like 1 or 2 people can attack that problem, but I want to bring my own sort of little CNC twist to that project.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I've also seen, there's someone else I follow, Maker on the Go. He has a camper. But basically he lives out of the camper van, and then he has this truck with all the sleeper bed, like all the amenities that you need. But in his backside camper, it's a full maker space. So like now he's also able to travel around the US, camp out wherever he wants, make things while he's doing it. So yeah, very interesting. And then I just saw Laura Camp's latest make, which was very interesting. She goes and pulls a boat out of a lake and then retrofits it or makes it all nice again. That was pretty cool. Great. Well, so then you want to make your own twist on a camper van. That sounds interesting. Maybe one day we'll get to see it.
Yeah, hopefully 2020.
So hopefully in 2020. All right. If crypto picks up, right? Kidding. So CNC. Now we can make this one kind of brief. I just wanted to see, we've been talking about it, and anyone who's stuck around until now, looks like there's still plenty of people here. CNC, could you kind of just give us, a down? I know you have this video series. I'm going to share. Am I cutting out, by the way, or is everything fine?
I'm getting just a little bit of lag or stutter periodically, but I can still understand you.
Okay, good. So you have this 5-video series. I'm going to share the link one more time for the playlist, but could you kind of just give us a quick breakdown? Like if you were to take those 5 videos and just boil it down to like 1, what is CNC? And 2, why would you be interested in learning CNC in like a minute? That'd be awesome.
All right. So for those of you who aren't familiar, CNC stands for computer numerical control. And so it's basically just any machine that is controlled through coordinates. And it's basically a CNC, which I just throw around the term. I'm really referring to a CNC milling machine, the machine that takes a router or a spinning bit and carves away material. 3D printers are technically also CNC machines. They are computer controlled, but instead of a cutter, you have just a little squirt gun of hot plastic, or a laser cutter is also a CNC machine, but with a laser instead of a spindle. But so, however, I usually just tell people, imagine what would happen if you gave a robot a Dremel. That's basically a CNC machine. And so CNC, in my mind, is one of the best ways to sort of physically realize a product. You can do it in 3D printing, but you get to work with more traditional materials like wood or aluminum and have some fun making things like that. And what I like about it is that it is the perfect Trojan horse for learning. If you're cutting something and it bends, you're learning about strength of materials. I had an issue where I was cutting aluminum and it was gumming up the cutter, and I was wondering what's going on. And it turns out that I had used that piece of aluminum as sort of a blast shield for my blowtorch, and I had softened the material. And so in my CNC adventures, I've discovered so many physical phenomena that I might have learned about in school, but it never registered, and I never gained an interest in it until I had an actual realization of that problem in front of me. Same thing with robotics, electronics, learning how stepper motors work, doing the graphic design and the CAD for some of my projects. This hobby has taught me so much more and engaged me in ways that school couldn't. So I think CNC is a fantastic learning aid. And furthermore, learning to use a CNC kind of prepares you to be in the workforce of the future, because digital fabrication automation is going to become more and more prevalent as we go on. And being able to speak that language is kind of important to the well-being of our country, right? We need a educated workforce. There is a shortage of skilled technical labor out there right now. So I think it's kind of important to sort of promote this technology and get people interested, if not for their own interests and well-being, then for the country's well-being. So I don't know. That's just me on my pulpit saying that I think CNC is awesome. It's a great learning tool, and it's important in our society, I think, to have people who are comfortable with this technology.
Yeah, I think that's a great message. To be honest, when you put it this way, it's the human, right? I mean, that's basically what you're saying. Is you're saying I want it to be able to control a robot. I learned how to do it. If you want to be able to do it, you can do it as well. I feel that this type of is you're seeing 3D printers, laser cutters, the milling machines. All of these machines, it's almost kind of new technology for this age, right? I mean, it's not like you were able to buy a 3D printer 10 years ago. At least it wasn't affordable. So years from now, people who learn how to do this, they're going to be at the foundation of what there is 10 years from now. And so I'd say definitely a great skill to acquire. I personally, I can't do it this week for me. And I have this huge list of things that I want to do to better myself. Now I can add CNC to the list, of course, but we'll see how much time I have.
Sure.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So now, for anyone who's joining and interested in hearing about Winston's Instagram, you have, I think, over 30,000 people subscribed to you, right?
32 last I checked.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot.
What's a couple thousand between friends?
People. Sorry.
What's a couple thousand between friends?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest, that is a lot of people, and I mean, well earned. I watching your videos, they're all very, very informative, very educational, and you do a very good job at articulating and instructing. So anyone who I shared the links right now to Winston's YouTube page as well as his Instagram. But if you are interested in some very good content, now for sure. I want to ask you some questions though.
Sure.
about YouTube. So I only have, I think, two here. But so first is, what drew you to YouTube? And then I have kind of a comment here. You know, your YouTube is pretty big, and I love the drew you to YouTube. And do you have any long-term goals for YouTube? And I think you kind of touched on this towards the beginning of our discussion here, but maybe we could just reiterate on it.
Yeah, sure. So my YouTube channel first started out as sort of just a way to share projects. So some of my first project videos are from like of me in college, like just working in like the electronics lab. I think one of my very first ones was like turning a power supply into a benchtop power supply. So taking it out of a computer, snipping all the 12-volt leads and hooking them up into a cable and taking the ground wire and making that available so I could just power any 12-volt or 5-volt device. But it was just me with a laptop, pointing the webcam down, taking a time lapse and just uploading it. I really didn't have a direction, or I didn't have a knowledge of like what I wanted to do with that. So I was sort of just sharing it. I'd put some text over it so someone might get some educational value out of it. But those really didn't resonate with people, and honestly, they didn't resonate with me because I didn't know what I was trying to do. When I got my CNC, I think I was probably the first person to do a Shapeoko unboxing video, and I really didn't know where that would lead. But I started putting out project videos from there, sort of just sharing my process. I didn't really feel comfortable using my videos as an educational tool because I was still learning. And then a couple months down the road, the creator of the Shapeoko, Edward Ford, he emailed me and he was like, "Hey, just keep on doing what you're doing. Like, you're doing a great job." A couple months after that, he flew me out to Illinois to help him film the promotional video for the next generation machine. And through that, his encouragement, I sort of just I kept on going. I developed an audience who enjoyed what I was doing, but up through 2016, I was still sort of just like floundering, like, "Hey, I'm making a project, I'm sharing it," with no expectation of teaching people because I didn't feel like a master. And eventually I started coming to terms with the fact that you don't need to know everything to benefit other people. Like, you don't need to be a genius in order to impart knowledge. And so I started looking at the videos more of as a tool to like go like the whole process, like, what did I try? Why didn't it work? How do you work around that? And it's just so people can not just like look at this video as like you could totally distill my videos down into like one of those like 30-second or 60-second like viral clips that get shared a bajillion times, but you don't learn anything from that, and that's the part that I don't want to lose. So I'm very transparent now about like what are the shortcomings of my process, like where did I fail, how can I do better, because I think that that design iteration is what's most helpful to other people. When they fail, what can they take away? What can they do differently? And how do you think to do something in a different way? Like, you might be like, "Oh, let me just draw out the shape and cut it," and it fails because the piece comes off or like something in the machine fails. That's very often the failure point. Like, something about the machine isn't working. If you have an intuition about how that machine works, you can troubleshoot that. And that's kind of the process. I want people to become self-sufficient. I want them to not be afraid to try, to fail, and to reason through how do you get to the desired outcome. In terms of ambitions or goals, I mean, like, who doesn't want like 1 million followers and one of those swanky YouTube play buttons? Who doesn't want like 1 million views and to go viral? But I think for me, the main goal is to share and inspire. When I first got my CNC, I didn't know how easy or how hard it was going to be. And the more I went along, granted I'm biased because I have a background in mechanical engineering, but I was like, this is something that with a little training, just about anyone should be able to pick up and do. And so I sort of took that upon myself as sort of my mission, right? To get more people interested in CNC. And with sort of the very niche market that I've driven myself into, like CNC videos, if I want to succeed as a YouTuber, I need other people to buy into the idea that CNC is awesome. And if I want to use my channel as an educational vessel to sort of help get people into the fold and teach them about CNC and get them using CNC. I need like I only succeed if other people succeed. So if CNC becomes a market failure, well, then my videos are going to be a dead end. But if I can sort of help just push CNC technology along, get it into the public consciousness, make it as prevalent as 3D printers, if not more prevalent because I'm biased, then that's, I think, going to be good for me in the long run. So I'm kind of biased. I love CNC technology, but my success and my goals are sort of all derived around getting other people on board.
Awesome. You know, you bring up I guess a funny anecdote here, but it's like, you know, who wouldn't want 1 million followers? Who wouldn't want? I mean, I personally, I would be cool with that, right? But I know some people who just aren't genuinely interested in this. Like, you know, Evan and Caitlin, I love their page. I love the stuff that they do. I love that they're a couple. And I watch them and I show it to my girlfriend. I'm like, Carla, we should do this. You know, like we should make a page together. And Carla's like, I don't want people to see me. I don't want to be on your YouTube. I don't want to be on your channel. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that sucks. Looks like scratch off the Evan and Caitlin copycat plan, but definitely very amendable. Winston, you know, it's nice to aim for the stars. And I honestly, I mean, I don't know. I can see so many awesome things in your page. I wish you the best in influencing as many people as possible, because there's so much you're doing, and it's a great learning experience for me. I plan on going in and watching more. So, yeah, no, of course. And you kind of answered the other question, is like, what makes you a successful YouTuber? Kind of in the last answer that you gave, but I think I'd like to add, you know, I really respect that, you know, you're in it for teaching people, you know, and getting people familiar with these technologies and you know, educating as well as that's really cool. Did you want to add anything else to that? Because that was my next question. You know, what makes a successful YouTuber?
It sort of depends on what your goal is, right? I've read Bob Claggett's book. I followed him a lot, and one of the things he's told me is that you need to not forget what, like, the reason behind what you're doing. So, like, let's say I become a full-time famous YouTuber and I just keep doing this. It's still a job, and eventually that grind is going to get boring. So unless you have the right motivation to drive you, you're going to lose interest. You're going to burn out. And so, for me, the bottom line at the end of every video, I want people to come away with more knowledge than they came in with, and I'm hoping to sort of just advance the agenda of CNC. And so with sort of that as my driving force to get people to buy into the idea that they too can also use a CNC, there's sort of that underlying current that just keeps driving me along. And if I don't forget that, then I've always got the motivation to just push forward, even if I'm like sort of just burned out with a project, to just get that information, get that video, get that entertainment out there to hopefully benefit others. So as success, like there are many metrics, but for me, is it doing what you love, and like, are you achieving your goals? Some people, they might just be happy with, like, if they do something like really niche, like they turn like spinning tops on a lathe or something. If they can find just a little community where they can communicate, have a really nice dialogue going, that in and of itself can be a great reward. You look at like huge channels like Grant Thompson, King of Random, like he's got a really successful channel, but the quality of the engagement that he has, like, you wouldn't call that a community. It's like, you look in the comments, like a lot of people just like say like, oh, why don't you try throwing X, Y, or Z in dry ice? Like, that's not a constructive conversation or a dialogue. And for me, I'm blessed to be in the quote unquote hardcore maker world, where a lot of my audience is really supportive, and they're really interested in sharing that knowledge and helping others. One of my recent videos where I was sharing an experience where I almost set my CNC on fire, that was one of the videos where I had the most engagement, and all of those comments were people chiming in with their own anecdotes, with their own tips, and like for me, being a part of a community that's that supportive is super rewarding. And so I'm happy to be in this space and continue going on that particular path.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I feel like what you mentioned, that's got to feel very rewarding, post a video and just get 1,000 people saying awesome, or you can get people saying, actually engaging and having a conversation, to better themselves. And I like that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, so, I mean, unless anyone else has any questions, we'll keep moving. Just to let you know, the show between about right now and 10 minutes from now. So like right about the top of the hour. So we're just going to get through these last few questions here, and then we can kind of close it out here. But I want to talk about your adventurer side. And I just have a few questions. Would you ever, because we were talking about maker on the go. I'm going to make this a two-parter. One is, are you a maker on the go? So like I see these videos that you post in your story. I feel like you are still doing maker things while you're traveling. Unless I'm mistaken, I feel like I've seen your stories and you're doing maker things while you're traveling. But then, are you a maker on the go? And all how much influence does your adventuring have on your makes?
So this past year has been kind of unique for me, but last year, before my friend got engaged and couldn't go on trips with me, we did a road trip through California, and I made sure that it ended in San Francisco about the same time as Maker Faire. And so the trips that I go on aren't always tied to making, but I try and like tie the two together whenever I can. And in terms of like drawing inspiration from where I go, it's kind of different. So I've got a friend who, let me see on my desk, she makes these wood-burned emblems. And so she made one of these that's of the Bay Area, and that's really cool. And it's inspired very much by the geography and the location. For me, I don't really go on trips to find inspiration, but I use trips as sort of like a mission or to give me a purpose. So when I flew down to NASA's Kennedy Space Center for a rocket launch, I was like, all right, I need to beef up my tripod so I can stick a big honking telephoto lens on my camera and take a picture of the rocket as it's going up. And so I created a project that was basically me making a hook that I could use to weight down my tripod. And so I'll find reasons to make something based on where I'm going. Every now and then I take my car to the racetrack. It's a big SUV. It's not a sports car, but it's just for fun. And last year, I wanted to get some decent audio of the engine. So I made a little mount for my phone so that I could stick my phone under the hood of the car. So it's always just like I come up with these ideas that support the adventure, but the adventure isn't really the source of creativity. It's sort of they go hand in hand.
Yeah, no, that's very cool though, because I mean, what is it? You could, so for instance, I always like revert to this, right? So like I think, hey, I want to go do this. Let me check Amazon to see if they have something that I could use during my travels, right? But having the maker mindset is that let me make this, and because then you made it, you get to kind of like experience it yourself. Anyways, I think that's really cool. I didn't know that part about your travels. So you seem to, so far it sounds like you create things based on where you're going. I like that aspect. That's pretty cool. The last thing I have here on adventure side of things is if you could go anywhere in the world. I know that it seems like you like to go on these road trips around the US, but if you could go anywhere in the world, and let's just say add in a road trip there, where would that be?
Really tough to say right now. So I like if you gave me two choices to visit a city or visit like nature, I'd probably take nature. So like 2 years ago, I did a trip to Iceland, and that's a place where the landscape is really the dominating feature. And so I'd like a trip like that. Maybe drive up the Oregon coast, or maybe go through Yosemite or something. Just something where I can sort of throw myself into the wilderness for a bit, right? For me, the thrill of the trip is to see something you've never seen before, and that's why I like just going from site to site, going on hikes, because around every corner is something you've never seen before, and it sort of unlocks like a childlike sense of wonder and discovery, right? You don't always get that, like just like exploring a city or something, but when you go places, when you like go somewhere remote, you're seeing something that not a lot of people have seen before. And for me, like as a YouTuber, like I like to share that experience, but it's also just like that's that's the kind of enjoyment and wonder that I like to immerse myself in. So really, I'd like to go anywhere with a view. Um, but I wouldn't stay there for too long just because that takes me away from the workshop. Every time I go on trips, I'm sort of torn between like, all right, I'm having a great time, but like I'm not making any content or making projects. And eventually it'll reach a critical mass where it's just like, I've accumulated all these project ideas in my head that I have to go back. But I think 2 to 3 weeks is the longest I would go on any one stint away from my workshop.
An adventure. Yeah, I have this theory. You said, this childlike wonder, going back to childhood when you go to these new places. So, I don't know if you experience this, but like when you're driving somewhere for the first time, it takes a lot longer than it does coming back from that place. Like if I'm driving from San Diego to Disneyland, even though it's 2 hours there and 2 hours back, going there feels like it's 4 hours and coming back feels like it's 1 hour kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
Theory that the more you explore places and things that you haven't done before, the longer you perceive time. And so like, I know that in 2017, I think I traveled like 20 times, for work, and some very little for pleasure, but mostly for work. It felt that 2017 was like the longest year I've ever had in my life, because I was going to places I've never been before. And so by the time I got to like October in 2017, I was like, can this year be over already? Like I forever. And now I'm in 2018. I haven't traveled as much. When you're sitting around at home or in your office and you just experience the same thing over again, the routine, it almost feels like the time goes much quicker. And so I would, you have the chance in your life to, experience travel and adventuring like what Winston does. I feel that it prolongs your life. It makes you feel like you're living a longer, more fruitful life. So far, at least that's my theory. I don't know, but yeah, cool. So now I think we can just touch on this. We have about 2 more minutes or 3 more minutes. We can usually go a little over, but aerospace enthusiast. Now I have 3 questions. Where did this come from? And then aerospace, are you interested in the technology, the science, the industry, or do you actually want to go to space? And then are there any aerospace-esque type makes that you have up in the future?
Okay, so I have, since I was about like yay tall, been a big fan of anything that flies. I had a bunch of like airplane books when I was a kid, and it's just always sort of held my interest, right? Like, who doesn't want to defy gravity in some way? But growing up, like it's sort of hard to keep that interest, because unless you can make a career out of it, it sort of just dies down. And it's just like a background interest. When I got the chance to go to NASA to watch a rocket launch, up until that point, I think it was in 2015, I just hadn't really, like, I knew what SpaceX was. I sort of vaguely knew about the cult of Elon Musk, but I really wasn't like a fanboy, or just like really, I hadn't kept up with the technology. And so after that launch, after that like experience of feeling like the world's greatest subwoofer just rattling your chest from 5 miles away, watching like a miniature sun rising up off the horizon, that sparked something in my inner engineer. And I was like, this technology is amazing. You've got these like man-made objects that are pushing out millions of pounds of thrust at thousands of psi, thousands of degrees centigrade, pushing this rocket up through the atmosphere, through all the aerodynamic forces. And for me, that was sort of just like, that's where it clicked that this is awesome. And since that point, I've brushed up on all my launch vehicles, so I know the difference between like a ULA rocket, or SpaceX rocket, Antares, and some of the Russian models. And it's just, for me, a really interesting space to study because of just how much engineering and science has to push that envelope forward. As for whether or not I want to go into space, that's sort of, yeah, it'd be cool, but that's not my driving interest here. I'm just nerding out about the technology. Like just the idea of someone landing a 70-meter tall rocket falling hypersonic through the atmosphere from the edge of space is just really interesting. As far as any space-inspired projects, well, I recently made the SpaceX Dragon capsule as a bottle opener. But this is Dragon version 1, and there is a crewed version, Dragon 2, coming out later this year, and it'll be carrying people hopefully in 2019. And so I'm looking to make an updated version of that just in time for the inaugural launch of that new vehicle. That's the only thing I can make right now in terms of size and form factor. Like, I would love to CNC machine like a wooden rocket, but just the form factor doesn't fit well. A long, thin object subject to the stresses of machining doesn't come out so great. I know people who make really awesome 3D modeled rockets that and they print them out, but from a CNC perspective, it's a little more difficult. So I have to pick and choose my battles, and right now it's space capsules.
You could do a what is it? A metal one, right? With like a CNC
You could.
aluminum.
The precision to do that makes it a little tricky, especially on a non-precision machine. But I've got some ideas. I've actually thought about it. It's just a matter of implementing the special work holding and fixed ranges you need in order to hold a slender piece and then also be able to rotate it in an accurate way. But it's in the back of my head. Don't you worry.
Yeah. So Winston, have you ever seen? I'm going to take this recording a couple minutes extra. Sorry, everyone, if you're waiting to go. But have you ever seen an anime called Out? I don't know. This is a shot in the dark.
Unfortunately not. Like
Okay.
I've got a lot of friends who watch anime, but I just personally have not had the time. All my free time has been soaked up in the garage.
No, that's all right. That's all right. So there's an anime called Outlaw Star. I think it was early 90s. It's old. It's an old anime. And when they made this anime, what they did is they took these, stand-up rockets, like these traditional rockets that we have nowadays, and they take off, go into space. But when they land on any planet, they land standing up. And not more than just a few years ago, everyone was like, nah, screw that. That's not going to happen. That's impossible, blah, 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 right? And then sure enough, here we go. Another thing that's happening in this era, our generation, is getting to see rockets reach the edge of space, fall back down, and land freaking standing up. Like that's a huge technological advancement for humans, I would say. And I'm pretty stoked to hear about it. With saying how you enjoy more the science rather than. Sorry, what's up?
I'm saying don't forget it lands on a boat that's floating on.
Yeah, lands on a little platform floating on moving water, right? So I mean, that's amazing. But yeah, when you say I think I sympathize or I agree with you on this, is like, for me, I'm interested. I love space. Like, I'm always thinking about, what's the next thing that's going to happen? How could I possibly play a part in this technological revolution that's happening in space travel and new energy sources and everything. But I don't think I would be the first person to say, hey, yeah, send me to space. You know, like that's not really where my interests lie. I'm more capabilities and how we're moving forward so quickly. But yeah, cool. I love it. Thanks for sharing your answers there with that one, Winston.
No, my pleasure.
So this is the end of the. Still have a couple more announcements that I'm just going to blabber out in a second. But you get the last words with regards to, is there anything else you'd like to add or say to the people that are still watching or the recording?
I mean, if you haven't already picked it up, I hope you guys have come away with like at least a basic appreciation for like CNC technologies, what they're capable of. If you're looking into getting into the maker field or getting into YouTube, you just have to start somewhere. Pick a small battle, do it, but I would love to see more people get involved in this space. So just get out there and make something.
Awesome. Well, everyone, Winston Moy from Winston Makes his YouTube and Instagram links a couple times. Towards maybe tomorrow or towards the beginning of this week, I'll be releasing a blog with kind of the chat log that we had here in Blue Jeans, as well as the video that will be published or that is published. So please, Winston, thank you so much for joining. It was a pleasure having you, and you know, we really appreciate you taking this time out of your day to come do this with us. Thank you so much.
Pleasure's all mine. I had a ton of fun.
Awesome, good to hear. You're always welcome back. So if you know, like later on in the year or next year, we hope to be around for, I hope, forever. Feel free to let us know, and you could come show off some of your stuff, or if you want to do a CNC special episode, we can do that as well. You know, we'll demo or something. It's up to you. But thank you.
I'm sure we'll be
having you.
So take care.
Cool. You're welcome. You're welcome to drop off. We do usually turn the recording off and then go to like an after hours segment, but I know you have work or something. So if you have to drop off, we appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well,
all right.
Yeah, I do actually have to get back to work. So I'll catch you afterwards.
All right, cool. Thank you, Winston. We'll see you around.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
All right. Everyone, again, Winston Moy joined us. You know, make sure you check out all the links that we've shared. We'll definitely post them in a blog and share them on the @96boards social media channels. So you'll find that on @96boards with Twitter, @96boards on Instagram, @SDRobertW. Maybe Sahaj will post that in there, @SDRobertW. And then I want to share a couple other things here real quick. Last week, a video was posted, a very special video around 96 boards by the one and only It All. So if you have a chance, I would suggest cruising over to Stephanie GG YouTube there. Inside her YouTube channel, I'm going to pull this up. There is a Daft Punk that she made. The Daft Punk helmet, part 3, talks about the technology that she used in this helmet, which was the Dragon Board 410C. And so this is the video for that one. And awesome video. You know, you can watch all 3 parts, of course. Board in it, but it shows her make about 30 days prior to going to the Maker Faire in San Francisco this year, the process that it took her to make this Daft Punk helmet. She goes all the way through it, and then she even posts her code online, right? So you can have access to her code. Anyone with a Dragon Board, and recreate that code, follow the stuff online. That, I think, I lost my notes. I don't know where I put them. But that, I think, is the last bit of, I put my notes. Here we go. That is the last bit that I have to share. Anyone who is interested in tuning in for anything to do with Lenaro Connect, that will be happening in September. You can go to connect.lenaro.org. During that week, we will be live streaming all of our shows. There will be an open hours, live open hours in September from Vancouver, Canada. We have a special episode planned there. You can join in and see a big auditorium where we might do some giveaways. I'm really hoping to give away a bunch of really cool stuff. So we'll see how that goes. Other than that, see you next week. Sahaj, what do we have on the docket for next week? I don't actually look. So 96 boards / OpenHours. Let me see. Episodes. Next week, we will be meeting with Nazik and Yoshi. These are Novtech. They have made several 96 boards. In fact, they are responsible for the Meerkat and the Chameleon 96 FPGA based board. So if you're interested in hearing about these two 96 boards, Consumer Edition 96 boards, tune in. They will walk us through a bunch of cool stuff. We have a demo or two ready for you to share. I hope that my network issues weren't causing too much of a problem. I'll try to fix that for next week. All right, stay tuned at 96 boards, at SD Robert W for any updates. Until next week, hope you enjoyed. See you next time. Going to start closing out now. So Facebook's going off first. Bye, Facebook.
The broadcast of Facebook Live has stopped.
Now I'm going to turn off the recording. Sahaj, if you want to start turning off the YouTube. Bye, YouTube.